Welcome to Finally Fettled, the podcast where cannabis meets conversation and maybe a little chaos.
We're your hosts,
Jackie
and Tori, here to keep it real about our cannabis journeys, share some laughs, and potentially even drop a little knowledge along the way.
We're all about making cannabis fun, approachable, and a bit less intimidating, whether you're a seasoned smoker or just kinda curious.
So sit back, spark up, and let's explore the highs, the lows, and everything in between.
Responsibly, of course. Let's get this sesh started.
Do not use cannabis if you're under the age of 21. Keep cannabis out of the reach of children. Please consume responsibly. Guys, welcome back to another episode of Finally Fettled.
Hi.
Happy to have you guys here. Thanks for listening. Today we are so excited because we are here with special guest, Ben Zacks, the CEO of Fine Fettle.
Hey, Ben.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here.
We are so excited to be talking to you today. I know that you probably have a lot to say about Fine Fettle and where we started from, where we're going, everything in between. But before we jump into that, Jackie, talk to us about what we're consuming responsibly.
All right. This morning we started our day with the orange Chameleon from Berkshire Roots. It's a nice little sativa strain. And so we're ready to go this morning.
Yes. Berkshire Roots, they are one of my top brands. They are based out of Massachusetts. I think that they have a bunch of different things. I think they do like flower edibles and, pre-rolls and all of the things. But this strain is a nice little cross between Tangy and Thank You, Jerry. And it's just very citrusy, clementine, orangey. It tasted good, and it's just uplifting, energizing.
Yep.
We with it.
We with it heavy.
Yeah.
Ben, what about you? Are you a sativa diva or an indica princess?
So I am never a daytime user, basically because I couldn't focus on the 2.5-year-old and the 5-year-old who live in my house with me. But I'm a nighttime indica help me sleep through the night. I got too many things running through my head all day, every day, so it helps me sleep through the night. So definitely an indica guy.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right. So Ben, talk to us about Fine Fettle. I know we started with the one dispensary in Willimantic, and it's kind of just grown since then. So what made you want to get into the industry? What is your personal journey with cannabis? Tell us a little bit about the beginning.
Sure. So my journey in this industry sort of got thrown into it, honestly. I, out of college, was a teacher in inner city Philadelphia. I then worked in education technology for a couple of startups. I then went and worked at a big hedge fund. And then I was coming to work in our family business, which is really cell phone towers and cellular. And in that time, I'm from Hartford, big UConn fans, and Connecticut had this small medical program. And with our partners, who was honestly a guy who we sat next to at UConn games, Rick Carbray, who's our CEO in Connecticut, we applied and we just went in. Connecticut had 4 medical cultivators, the producers, which they're fondly known as, and then the 9 dispensaries, and they were giving out some number of more dispensaries. They actually didn't tell us how many more licenses there were going to be. So we put applications in all throughout the state, and luckily, one of our applications in Willimantic won. And our sort of view from there was, right, it's really hard to just be one store. You get no synergies of growth. It's really hard to make a brand out of it. It's really hard to sort of see scale. And then after we won the license and we got sort of rocking and rolling in construction and such, we heard a rumor that the license that had been awarded in Newington was going to be coming available, that the winners weren't going to operate it themselves. And so we went and made what we thought was a competitive offer, and it ended up being that. And so we then got the Newington license. We opened that up. So this is in June and then September of 2019. And since then, it's really just snowballed. We moved into Massachusetts. We moved further into Connecticut with a 3rd license that we got to open up in Stamford. And then we won in Georgia. And, now today we've got 9 stores open in Connecticut. We've got our grow on the cusp of launching products. We've got 2 stores in Mass. We've got our grow and 3 dispensaries in Georgia. And, there's been some wins and some losses along the way, but it's been sort of a wild ride. And, I'll never sort of forget coming back to this, is you used to ask me, what sort of motivates me in this. Part of it is when I was a teacher in inner city Philly, my second year, I had 48 kids. And of my 48 students across 2 classes, I had 30 that had parents who had been in jail for petty drug crimes, like all little things. Everything was just sort of possession. And, sort of understanding the impact and history on this plant, I think sort of motivated me into like figuring out how we could right the wrongs of the past, but also run a great business. Because one thing that's special about cannabis is it touches everything, right? It's political, it's finance, it's marketing, it's science, it's operations, it's horticulture, it's sociology, it's criminal justice. And definitely undiagnosed ADD probably. And so I need a million things going on, and cannabis sort of does all of that. And I just find the people in the industry so interesting and so amazing.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I think you touched on a lot of really, really great points there. That is so interesting. I knew that you were a teacher before, but I didn't realize the connection to that and cannabis, which I think is just a really amazing story to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really cool that you got to, well, I don't know if cool is the right word, but it's really just like interesting. You got to see that perspective and that side of things and really like launch an entire business from that. So that's really cool. So talk to us a little bit more about our grow in Connecticut, your plans, and just a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So there's sort of a cyclical impact of and happening of the industry. And it's oftentimes pretty consistent in states where you open up and there's not enough patients and it's really expensive to build grows, right? And then you get a couple of dispensaries, and the dispensaries are, honestly, they're less expensive to operate than a cultivation facility. And then you see an over early supply based on an incredible amount of dollar capital investment into the grows, right? And then you generally see it flip, where there is quite a bit of demand, there's not a ton of supply, and so the dispensaries oftentimes have to charge more product because the supply is really expensive. And for us, as who's been predominantly a retailer, not predominantly, we've been all a retailer up to this point in Connecticut, we've been sort of at the whim of all the product that's been available to us. And, pricing is basically a function of what people are charging us to buy whatever wholesale product we can. And, so then we try and do special things like excellent customer service, have a great loyalty program, rewards program, have awesome staff, have good marketing, et cetera, to get people into our stores. But we firmly believe that having a cultivation next allows us to really own the whole supply chain. And that doesn't mean we're not going to keep the products that our customers and patients love from other producers, but we think we're going to do a lot of things well, hopefully better, with new strains, new products, new SKUs, new options. And we've also learned from 5.5 years where our customers want things, where they want things priced, what strains sell, what they're looking for. And so, we always knew that to get cultivation open was going to be sort of our ticket to unlock better growth and honestly more profitability. But really what that's going to turn into is more customers and patients coming through our doors. And so we are so excited. Like my singular goal was to be the first big grow open in Connecticut, indoor. And we were able to accomplish that. We bought a piece of land right in Bloomfield. I actually used to drive by this spot basically every day for 4 years going to high school. I went to high school in Windsor, and we built a 46,000 square foot grow facility. We got 6 grow rooms, about 16,000 square feet of cultivation. We can double stack some of the rooms. We're going to ultimately lead into having extraction and edible production in there. And then we've been really, really smart and focused on genetics and, what genetics we have and making sure it's a clean and well-operating facility. And then we just built what we think is an A-plus facility with A-plus equipment. Awesome racking, awesome lights, awesome HVAC, clean rooms. And then most importantly, because none of it's done without an awesome team, we brought in really, really great group of employees who are just so passionate about what we're doing, but also really smart about the way that you're doing it. Because you have to have that mix of expertise and passion to do things really well. And I think that's been sort of the key to our success across the business. And it's not going to change with the cultivation, but we're just so excited to be able to have our product put on shelves, bring more inventory to the state, and, hopefully have customers and patients just love what we've produced out of that building in Bloomfield, because it's really an amazing place and we've set ourselves up to succeed. And, our success really just means customer happiness, because at the end of the day, we're a customer service business that's trying to get the same people and more people to come back and back and back into our stores. And if we got great products to do that, that only makes our jobs and lives easier rather than scrapping and clawing for everyone to come back.
Absolutely. It's definitely exciting times for Fine Fettle in Connecticut right now.
I know. I'm so excited.
Ben, I'm interested from your perspective, the difference between operating in Connecticut versus Massachusetts versus Georgia.
That's a great question and something that I am constantly thinking about and struggle with in a certain sense, right? Because the sort of famous descriptor in this industry of these businesses are MSOs, right? MSO. And for people who are not as familiar, that means a multi-state operator, right? And I actually think it's sort of a bad way to think about yourself as a business. I'm a believer that you actually need to be a single state operator with corporate support across those single states, because every state is totally different. The customer base is different. The laws are different. The people operating are different. Your facilities are different, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we try and take best practices, but really focus on implementing them directly into the market we're in. So to think about the three markets, right? We'll talk sort of from most mature to least mature. Massachusetts is a matured market. There is oversaturation of stores. There's oversaturation of supply. There's oversaturation of grows. And Massachusetts has been a place where customer loyalty is hard to find and then hard to keep. And so you've got to market differently. And we think the best tool for marketing in Massachusetts is your menu, right? So in Massachusetts, we have so many vendors to choose from and so many ways that we can price that we've had to build a model where we can sort of be everything to everybody, because every type of customer has so many options of products and stores to go to. And it's really, really hard. And so we've got to be like hyper focused in that sort of way. And also the relationship side is different because there's 120 growers. Like if something's not selling, you got to sort of move on and move forward. But if something that your customers really want is there, you also need to like fight and claw for it, because there's going to be 300 other stores who want these products that they know customers want. And so Massachusetts is like a really matured place. And we've had struggles in Massachusetts, to be totally fair. Our Rowley store sort of peaked out in 2021, 2022, and then we lost a lot of market share, sort of not changing with the times. And now we've brought the store all the way back past where it was at its peak, right? And that's a really hard thing to do. At the same time, we thought Martha's Vineyard was going to be an unbelievable market for us, and just some of the fundamentals were really hard. And we ultimately had to sell off the Martha's Vineyard operation in business because we couldn't operate it in a focused and profitable way. And so like that's Massachusetts. And, it's like sort of what cannabis likely becomes. But at the same time, it's really hard for businesses there because there's just so much competition that everyone to survive sort of needs to operate at razor thin margins. And then you have Connecticut, right? And Connecticut has been sort of a unique state. It was a very, very, very strong medical state, not huge market penetration. We never got over 2% of patients in Connecticut, but an incredibly robust medical menu back in the day in Connecticut. For those who remember, like so many edible options, no gummies, right? So everything was baked goods and unique edibles. I mean, had these growers opened up bakeries with non-infused products, they probably would have done pretty well. The products were amazing. And
yeah, I still think about the
really
lemon
great.
lavender bars.
And then there were so many concentrate options and at different price points and different potencies and different formulations and different recipes. And then Connecticut goes adult use, and adult use in Connecticut has not been sort of like the cash cow, I guess you could say, that a lot of other states have been. But we're nestled between New York, which has a huge illegal and then legal market with a lot of supply. So flower doesn't necessarily do so great in New York, but all of the extracted products really do. Massachusetts is, no matter where you are in Connecticut, you can be basically within an hour from Massachusetts, where prices can be significantly less. And then even Rhode Island is cheap. So in Connecticut, we have really strict rules, right? Not a lot of marketing is allowed. Not a lot of products are allowed. It can't show the flower in the stores, right? Like there's just a lot of things that make Connecticut tough, but also you know exactly what you get. And we sort of like that in Connecticut, because once you have the rules down, then you can get really, really efficient in your operations because things are sort of specific. The other part about Connecticut is there's this fight because there's just been undersupply for a lot of the market at the beginning. Now that's not so much a problem, but there's not a lot of SKU variety. And so trying to keep customers intrigued and interested because, right, people don't just want the same thing over and over. People want to try new stuff. They want to taste new things. They want to find the genetics that are right for them. And so Connecticut is like, we're in sort of like this big wave, but also it's still a really early market. People comparing Connecticut now to Massachusetts now is not fair. You have to compare Connecticut now to Massachusetts in 2019 because we're 5 years behind them in legalization. And then we're in Georgia, and Georgia is so early, right? First off, it's the South. You're in the Bible Belt. It's a very, very conservative program. We're only allowed to sell what's called, quote, low THC oil. So there's no flower, there's no vape. We sort of figure out how to sell gummies within the law. And the qualifying conditions are sort of unique, right? It's end-stage cancer, which means you literally need to have stage 4 cancer to get a card. And so It's a very early market and early state, but we built an unbelievable facility. And, so a lot of our work in Georgia is really about lobbying to have legislators understand the hugely beneficial impact of this plant and of this medication so that it can expand, that our business can grow and thrive like it does. And it will happen. It happens everywhere, we think, but it takes time. And so, we have to treat each market incredibly different while sticking to like our core values and the way we think about things and treating people the right way, because that's how you create consistency across the board. And that's how you create a business that can span location and time. And, and so I spend a lot of my time thinking about like, how do we both focus yet stay true to ourselves, because it's a really hard thing to do.
I was just going to say, Ben, like you're saying, every state is so different and you have to treat each one as its own separate entity within the business. But I feel like you specifically do a really great job of kind of uniting all of the Fine Fettle employees and kind of giving us all the same goal to work towards. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to hear like more about that from your perspective and, kind of like how you go about making everyone just feel unified and connected.
Yeah. So first off, I appreciate that because I do work hard at that, and I do think about that. And, I have, as the leader of the business, I have my own strengths and weaknesses. Like, you guys have seen me. Like, I think I describe myself in my strengths as like being pretty creative in my thinking. I think that I do a good job, like bringing people along, right? So like understanding the vision. I think I'm open-minded to being wrong. And I think so because of that, like I listen to people. I try and listen to people on their opinions so that we can make decisions. But at the same time, like there's a lot of things that I struggle with. Like I am not great all the time at getting into the nitty-gritty of the financials, right? And so sometimes there are changes that I think we should make, both positive and negative, that like I'm not as keenly focused on in the day-to-day because I do a lot of the cultural work and building and sort of the creative futures thinking. I'm also really not organized, right? I'm also not like routine oriented and consistent in lots of ways. And so one of the things that I've really leaned on is like looking at the strengths of the senior leadership team around me and helping and ensuring that like their strengths can permeate through the business and that I learn from them on what they're doing well to succeed. And so like, I think as I noted, I'm good at setting a goal, right? And I'm good at sort of creatively driving towards that. But I am not good at like keeping consistent tabs on all of that. So like we have as you two both know, we have an OKR system at Fine Fettle, which really means like what are the goals and how do we have results within that? And as you grow and scale, one of the things that was really important to me was this idea of like making sure everyone realizes the value of their work in what we're trying to accomplish at a really macro level. So I have a chief of staff, Brandon, who like basically said, all right, if that's what you want to accomplish, we're going to implement this OKR system and everyone's going to get results and everyone's going to understand how these results feed up and everyone's going to have goals and the goals are subsets of their manager's goals and it should all really flow together. And so, he built this system and then I said, well, the next part about the system is for people to really have buy-in, it's got to be transparent because I think that if people don't know what's going on, like why are they going to care about what you're doing? And so we want to be open that the production teams know what's going on in retail and HR knows what's going on in marketing and marketing knows what's going on in production. And I think that like if you understand what you're trying to accomplish and you have a culture and values that you like focus on meeting the culture and values, and then you have processes to ingrain those into your team, then you have a good chance of making it happen, right? And then because then you set everything up for execution risk. And I think that, like hammering home the point and engaging everyone everywhere and answering those questions allows people to fit into what you're doing, so that, going back to your last question, like people in Georgia give a shit about what's going on in Connecticut, even though they're two totally separate businesses, because we're part of creating a greater good and a bigger whole. And I think that's, what I try and do. And I think that the proof is in the pudding. You both have your business outcomes, but you also have your lack of turnover, and you have people who are committed and people who want to be promoted and people who want to stay in jobs and people who want to be here. And, so you have to fit all those pieces together, but it's hard.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. We
Such
have the Fine Fettle fam, and that starts with the employees, and I think it just extends over to our customers as well.
We're all fam here. Ben, I have a question that I get asked a lot. What does Fine Fettle mean? Why Fine Fettle? Tell us all about it.
So funny that you asked this, and going back to sort of your last question of like, what do you focus on and how do you sort of create a culture? A lot of it is like knowing where you're good and where you're bad. The true answer of where did Fine Fettle come from was we hired a branding agency, right? And they said, they came with this whole thing and they didn't really ask questions. And at the end, they were like, or they asked questions of what we wanted to be. And we didn't ask too many questions because they're like, well, what do we know? And they said, well, your name is Fine Fettle. And I was like, what? I was like, what does that mean? What is that? It has nothing to do with cannabis. Like, there's all these other big sort of coming companies that have some sort of like reference to medical or medicine or cannabis or green. And they were like, so I said, well, what does Fine Fettle mean? And that was the first question that I asked, right? My first reaction was sort of the things that I was just noting. And the branding guy said, that's the perfect first question to ask. And I said, why? He said, because the goal of a brand is to get people to remember and to get people to engage.
Yep.
And by you asking, what does Fine Fettle mean? You're automatically showing me curiosity.
Yep.
And so he then said, Fine Fettle means to be in good health, good condition. It's an old English British term. It was sort of remade famous recently by the movie The Darkest Hour about Winston Churchill, and right before the eve of the Germans bombing London in World War II. But Fine Fettle has this sort of like fun undertone. It's different. We're not going to use the color green and sort of be weedy. We're not going to be stonery, but we're going to do this. And then Fine Fettle, you can create so much interest and intrigue from it. And he was 110% right, because I am sure if you polled our bud tenders, like how often do new customers ask what Fine Fettle means? Jackie, you can probably respond to this more specifically than anyone. It's like a lot.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, by getting Fine Fettle and by asking the question, like, you're memorable day one versus lots of other places don't have that. Like, how many times have you been to a place and you were like, oh, that was great. Like, what's it called again? What's it called? And you can't remember.
Yep.
That doesn't happen with us. So we end up being sort of first in front of mind. And, and then I think we've taken this idea of what the meaning of Fine Fettle is, to be in good health and good condition, as something that is really true to our nature of trying to make people feel better. And it's not just about the product, because we've really been retailer first. I think that's the expectation, that cannabis makes you feel good, happy, better, creative, less stress, whatever ailment or qualifying condition that you have, it helps the symptoms of that. But it's actually blended way further into our retail ethos, which is making people feel warm and comfortable in a store that a vast majority of our customers 20 years ago never would have thought of stepping into. Right. And so Fine Fettle is sort of like, it's really ultimately what we're all about, which is, I think, what you'd always hope for in a name.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, there you go. Now you have it. Now we know. Mm-hmm. Now you guys know. Okay, this was so much fun, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys. And just wanted to say, Jackie and Tori are doing this because they wanted to. And they thought it'd be a good idea, and they thought they'd have fun with it. And that's the type of mentality that we just sort of have, right? Like, the most important of our core values is, to me, think they're all important. But to me, the most important one is to be bold and create change, which oftentimes comes up as like, because we do a lot of things every day, right? There's a lot of routine in our business. And that really means like, oftentimes it means like making things better. Or if you're not sort of happy with something, or if you think something would be more efficient, it also means like going for it. Right. And so I think you guys doing this podcast and, you know, you're having me on, but like it's creating the space that you guys feel the comfort and confidence to do something that you think is going to be fun and be good and add value, and you guys enjoy it. And
definitely,
you know, so I'm proud of you guys for doing this.
Thank you. Oh my gosh,
thank you,
no,
listeners.
thank you guys.
Yes. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram at Finely Fettled.
And
follow us on X, Fine Fettle 420.
And guys, please remember to please consume responsibly.
Do not use cannabis if you are under the age of 21. Keep cannabis out of the reach of children. Please consume responsibly.